The wrong two people are going to the CrossFit Games because we don't know who should be going to the CrossFit Games. We know two, probably three of the four people that should be going to the CrossFit Games from the Northern California Classic that happened over the weekend, but we definitely don't know four.
On the elite competitive side, there's obviously a lot going on there, that a lot of controversy.
TFX, Syndicate, Mayhem, they were all really great qualifying events. They were well run, and aside from TFX being a little bit weird on the programming side, they were pretty good. There were no blunders that we could look at to say, wow, this should not have been a qualifying event. We knew NorCal was a wild card, that it's the wild, wild west of CrossFit events.
Told them I'm not a fan of what they're trying to do.
Maybe burn your hands on the bar.
Everything burns.
Pass out from dehydration. And the old adage, oh, that's just NorCal.
But you know what they say? It's NorCal.
That seems to happen with all the blunders and last-minute changes that seem to happen every year.
Introduce a little anarchy.
It's kind of amusing. It's kind of part of the whole process. But when game spots are on the line, it suddenly becomes a little bit different. First off, I love this competition. It's got an old school retro feel, and it kind of falls under the whole category of unknown and unknowable. People need to be prepared for the elements, be prepared for changes, and that is cool to an extent, as long as it's fair. And that's what we have to get into, whether or not the changes and the things that happened this weekend at NorCal were fair, because that's very important when we're determining game spots. We've got people working out on uneven terrain. There's no internet, no live stream.
There won't be a stream tomorrow.
It's 100 degrees outside. A clock was nowhere to be found the whole weekend. There were no clocks ever. No one could find a clock. We had no idea about times during the races, and I'm not blaming anyone for that. There's just no clocks.
I wish we had a clock.
We don't have a time yet.
We don't have a time. We're going to try to get that as best we can.
Time to beat 12:38. I'd love to tell you what the time is right now, but I can't.
But no one can see the clock anyway, so to be able to know exactly what your time is to try to test that, I think it's going to be tough.
One truck's faster than the other truck in the truck push.
Heat 1, left lane.
Good for her, right? No, bad. Right lane's better.
Looks that way.
It's a whole event. It's not an event. It's half an event. We'll have two winners. They'll get half the points. I don't know. Jump ropes are falling apart.
He just told me that they took the jump ropes out of this next event. I'm assuming because they just keep breaking.
Our pets' heads are falling off!
No more jump ropes. More wall balls. No more jump ropes. Jump ropes bad. Wall balls good. Reverse lunge wall balls, not just regular wall balls. Oh, and they're right on the crease of where two mats meet so that you can be doing the reverse lunge wall balls on an uneven surface.
Oh, look at the flooring underneath Colton Merton's feet. Look at that. Colton is in a really tough spot. The floor is buckling where his right foot is placed. You see that?
Colton don't care.
But look, the honey badger doesn't care.
Gigantic heats, barbells scattered everywhere. PFAA, nowhere to be found. Probably a good thing. Some inconsistent judging, for sure.
Little two-part movement here. Looking at rec number 15, starting with the bar muscle up. We're looking for full lockout on top.
Different brand boxes, different color boxes. They borrowed them from gyms, I heard. I hope they were the same height and material. Athletes changing their own plates. Actually, I like that one, except sometimes the judge changed them too, and sometimes the judge changed them with the wrong plates. The reverse lunge wall balls, the gymnastics complex, even the truck push in theory. I like all of that. I can deal with all of that. I can even deal with uneven terrain and heat. That seems like the type of thing that can help determine who is mentally strong, who is able to be adapt, and who should be going to the CrossFit Games to determine the fittest person on earth. The programming is very unique there. The one thing that I would say is that there were 3 strength events 3 short strength events. I'm considering the truck push a strength event. People's legs are wobbling and they're falling over afterwards, and it's a 1-minute event, so it has to be a strength event. And then you've got Isabel, of course, and then you've got the heavy cleans, although they weren't so heavy after it was changed the day of. We're getting to that, don't worry. So a little bit on the heavy side, while at the same time, the endurance event was around an 18 to 19 minute time domain. Hope you guys enjoy the video so far. Do me a favor. One way that you can support me so that I can continue to make these videos and put effort into them is by checking out my sponsors. They are HGR CBD and Dude Meds. Now, HGR CBD is something that I use sometimes when I'm sore after workouts. They have CBD products that you can rub on your knees and certain joints that are not feeling well. They also have sleep products, gummies that sometimes I use for anxiety. And then Dude Meds is a telemedicine company that is for men, hormones, things like that, but they also have women patients as well. Do me a favor, check that out, and be sure to like and subscribe. It all really helps. Thanks. Now, we did test running for real, unlike TFX that had a 600-meter run that was kind of pointless. We tested running here. We did 2 miles on uneven terrain. I like that, but I still like to see something in that 25 to 30 or minute or more time domain. And you know at the CrossFit Games, actually, we already know because they've announced the first event. You're always going to have a 40-minute to an hour type workout of the CrossFit Games. And a lot of times you're going to have 2 endurance workouts. So that's just something that has to be tested beforehand. And we got, a 19-minute event here. So I think that's a little bit short as well. Heavily skills-based.
It's like I told them I'm not a fan of what they're trying to do with the programming.
Okay, I can deal with that. I can deal with the heat. I can deal with the broken jump ropes and changing it to wall balls. Here's the things that I cannot deal with game spots on the line. Everyone starts at a start line and has a foot race to the rower, and the clock starts for an event that starts with a row and then leads into a run. And the row is scored, as is the run, as 2 separate events. I'm sorry, the row is scored and the run row is scored. Now, somebody looks at that and says, oh, well, their rowers are lined up. So when they're racing to the rowers, the person whose rower is first, that's fine because they have to run a little bit further. But these two things are not equal. When the row is scored as an entire event on its own, the 20 seconds or so, maybe 15, I don't know, that you have to go to the first rower versus run with the crowd and go all the way down to the last rower is way more valuable than the amount of time lost on the run when getting off the rower for the run.
Once they say 3, 2, 1, go, they'll go from that line and run to their judge and hop on their rower.
They're about to take and they're off.
Okay.
You see, they give their judge their sheet and then they go to their rower.
Do you think that skews, like if you're in lane number 1?
Absolutely, dude.
This is an event that in the elite men's field had like 10 men within seconds of each other. That 10, 15, 20 seconds that it takes to get to the last rower could absolutely be the difference between winning the event and taking 20th in the event. That can't happen. This isn't hard. You all start on the rower. The rowers are lined up horizontally. You get off your rower and go into the run. I don't know what the logistics were or why that was decided. I just know it makes a big difference. We're talking about an entire event win potentially. How can I see that from my living room, but people who are doing this for a living, who have been involved in CrossFit for years, can't see this in simplicity? But that's kind of a theme about the setup and execution just not really being up to par.
I wish that the elite side of the competition would have been run a little or been executed a little better.
And I like this event. We're talking about whether this event should be a CrossFit Games qualifying event or not. I'm not saying it shouldn't be an event. I would have loved to have gone to this event. It seems extremely entertaining. Here's what else I can't deal with. Changing the weights to the heavy lift the day of several times for no apparent reason. Leaving those extra plates out on the floor for no apparent reason without the foresight to see what could happen in the worst case scenario. I kind of even can't deal with a time domain and cap on a workout that to me, seems entirely wrong for the finale, at least on the women's side, for the event that I'm going to talk about. I can even deal with the gator slowing down, having the two trucks and pushing them as a race, and one of them slowing down, and so they made it into a left lane event and a right lane event. You had two event winners, and it was split. Whoever did the right lane and whoever did the left lane. Fine. I don't know this for sure, but I heard that the left side started too slow as the day had already started. Now, I don't know if that means that was in previous heats and not the elite heat, but if it did start to slow after the elite heat had already started, and anyone, even one person, was on the left side while it was at a different speed, then the whole thing should have been thrown out. Because that means now on the left side, you've got some people going at the beginning when it's a little bit faster and some people going at the end when it's a little bit slower. At that point, you say, oh, you can't just throw out an event. You have to throw out an event or figure out how to get them working normally and do the event again. You cannot just let it stand. But I don't know if that happened or not. Sheesh. We sure are talking about a lot of things happening. Oh, and by the way, that Gator event, the truck push, is going to end up determining who goes to the CrossFit Games, as is the last event. This is going to be the tiebreaker. So these things are extremely important. All right, so when we talk about the last event, we had a couple box jumps into some legless rope climbs and then a heavy clean ladder. On the men's side, the weight was changed 3 times the day of. At least 2, but I'm hearing 3. I don't even know what the final weight was. I think it was 315. The final clean was originally supposed to be 335, and for whatever reason, the day of, the morning of, whatever, the clean was changed to 325 and then 315, and some places showed 325 and some places showed 315. The whiteboard apparently had one weight while they were being told there was another weight. And on both sides, men and women's, this event, in all likelihood, as we're going into it, is going to determine the second spot for the CrossFit Games. The first spot is locked in. We've got Nate Ackerman and Jorge Fernandez vying for the second spot on the men's side. Trayvon Benton is still in the mix, I think. On the women's side, we have Carolyn Prevost and we have Hattie Canyo. Kristen Holt is also in the mix. However, she's not as much of a heavy lifter as the other two, so people are thinking that it's going to be a two-way race going in. This event is going to determine who is going to the CrossFit Games. That's what the last event is supposed to do. Just like at the CrossFit Games, if it's a tight race and we're sorting out the best among 2 or 3 people, the last event is supposed to be the one to do that. And it's got to be good and it's got to be well executed. And we want it to be a race. But we didn't get that on the women's side, where we'll start. It's less controversial, kind of overshadowed by what happened on the men's side. We've got Hattie Canyo. She's flying. She's the first to the last bar in the heavy lift. We've got Carolyn Prevost. She's methodical. At TFX, let's not forget, the last event, Hannah Black lost her game spot to Sydney Michalation because she went too fast and started failing lifts. And she can lift heavy. Hattie Canyo goes fast. Carolyn Prevost, again, methodical. Hattie Canyo, now Carolyn's coming up. It's her turn for the heavy lift. What's going to happen? She's got to change her plates. Hattie's getting a breather. It's as exciting as can be. Are they both going to lift? Is only one going to get a chance to lift? Is Carolyn going to get the lift and Hattie's not going to get to it on time because she's not recovered? Maybe Hattie will fail again because she's not recovered. Carolyn will hit it and Carolyn will be going to the games.
Hattie Canyo is under
2.
it. Oh, and fails.
That's it. What do they do? What do they do?
Down.
How do they determine?
Instead, we got the sound of a buzzer. The time cap. Event's over. They're both just standing there. It goes to a tie break. Hattie Canyo jumped over the box first and got to the bar, which I have no problem with as a tie break. What I have a problem with is one person, Alex Kazan, finishing the event while the people vying for the second spot to make it to the CrossFit Games are left standing there. That is not how it's supposed to be, and that is something that you have to know ahead of time. If that was the only problem in the whole thing, it would be like, man, that really sucks. That puts a damper in the event. But it's that, among everything else, that makes us wonder, what didn't they do to prepare for this? What didn't they do in testing? Who didn't they consult? How did this go wrong? because we should have got to see that lift to go to the CrossFit Games. That's the perfect end to determine when two people have a razor thin margin. Who's going to finish the lift and sprint across the finish line? But we didn't get that. And the men's was arguably worse. Again, we changed the weights 3 times. A lot of confusion. We end up having Jorge and Nate fighting for the second spot to the games. Nate is flying through a man on a mission because he has to have, I think, 5 spots between him and Jorge. He has to win this event. Even if he wins, he might not get in. And it came down to a fraction of seconds between Bill Leahy and Jorge Fernandez for the spot that Jorge needed to be in for Nate to make the games if he won. Again, it's as close as can be. All we can hope for going into the last event. But the problem is that when Nate gets to the bar on his first lift, he loads up the wrong plates. By the time everything gets taken off and reloaded, he's given some conflicting information. Now Spencer Panchik has crossed the line and got in between him and Jorge Fernandez by the one spot that he needed in order to win outright over Jorge and go to the games.
And those 3 seconds would make a difference.
It would have if
who's going to the CrossFit Games.
If he beats Spencer, thank you.
Dude,
they're tied now. Now you could say that it's the athlete's responsibility to know the weights. And sure, that's true. But the athlete should never really be in a situation where different weights are listed in different areas. One on the whiteboard, one on competition corner, and then one with what they've been briefed. And the athlete should certainly never be in a situation where the weights that don't need to be there are still on the floor. The floor should have been cleared so that there could be no confusion. If those extra weights that didn't need to be there weren't there, this never would have happened. So yeah, fine. The athlete should know what weights he has to have on the bar. But also, the athlete shouldn't have had to know what weights went on the bar because those weights should have never been on the floor and the weights should have never been changed. And now we kind of don't know who should really be going to the CrossFit Games because the tiebreaker is the Gator Push, the event where the one side was slower than the other side and where they ended up scoring it as 2 separate events with 2 winners. The tiebreaker is who had an event win, who had the highest finish. Well, Jorge had the highest finish. He won on the truck push, but somebody else won too in the other lane because they separated lanes. This is absolutely insane. I don't think, for as much as I love the event, I do not think that this can ever be a qualifying event again. Not compared to Mayhem, TFX, and Syndicate. It's night and day. I was hoping that an event like this, the Wild Wild West with the weird workouts and stuff, rein it in a little bit, make sure everything's fair, and that we have a cool last event as a qualifier for the CrossFit Games. I wanted that, but now I don't. Not with everything that happened. It tainted the sanctity of how we determine the field for the CrossFit Games to find the fittest individual on earth, and that we cannot have. Now, as far as who is in and who is out, 4 spots up for grabs. We already mentioned that Alex Kazan was in, I think. So Alex Kazan, as expected, is going to the CrossFit Games. She proved herself to be the best at that competition easily, and she deserves her spot. She rolled the dice by putting all of her chips in NorCal, and she knew what she was doing. And Hattie Kenyo is going to her second CrossFit Games again this year. With Carolyn Prevost coming in 3rd, she will have a chance at the Last Chance Qualifier. The workouts are released on Wednesday, and it starts on Thursday, I believe, or Thursday and Friday. It's coming up this week. And just to be clear, I absolutely love Hattie Kenyo. And I'm not saying she didn't deserve to go to the CrossFit Games. What I'm saying is I wanted to see the last lift between them to determine who goes to the CrossFit Games. That seemed appropriate. Hattie's awesome. She's super fit. I had picked her at 7th because I knew she was jacked up. She had an injury. I thought she was looking into surgery, got an MRI and a bunch of stuff. I don't know. I know she is still injured, but I didn't know how badly she was injured, and she wasn't injured enough that she couldn't punch her ticket to the CrossFit Games. So congratulations to Hattie Canio. But Carolyn Prevost, Kristen Holt, they'll have a chance at the last chance qualifier, along with a lot of other big names. Some younger people like Reese Littlewood, Kyra Milligan, Shelby Neal. I think Bethany Flores and Emily Rolfe are probably injured. I don't know if we'll see them in the last chance qualifier. And there's other games athletes and up and comers. I'm not going to get into the whole list, but on the women's side, it's going to be a lot of people vying for one spot. On the men's side, we have Jorge Fernandez in second, going to the games. The former team athlete has looked better all year, fitter all year. He switched to Mayhem last year, and I'm not surprised at all that he's going. Nate Ackerman, again, from the controversy, will have to try to punch his ticket at last chance qualifier, as will people like Seth Stovall, Spencer Panchak. I'm interested to see Connor Volz again. But the winner, Bill Leahy, is in. The arc is complete. He's come a long way from the original villain years ago that Hiller called out for no repping.
Well, we got one. First invalid video of the year. At this point, you already know who it is. It's Will Leahy IV. And there's no hiding that he's fit. Even as we're going to watch what we're about to watch, you can't deny that. That doesn't mean he's smart.
To taking accountability for the no repping and getting better, to Hiller and him essentially becoming friends, and Hiller documenting his ultimate goal of making and winning the CrossFit Games, to disappointment after disappointment, bad luck after bad luck. Poor day ones have plagued him. He tore his Achilles last year at semifinals and had to rehab it for the last year coming into this. And now we have finally arrived. Bill Leahy is going to the CrossFit Games, and I am super excited. I would never be as invested in this story if it wasn't for Andrew Hiller. I was watching this stuff before I even started making content. It's just like a movie where if they don't develop the characters properly, we don't care when they die. But in Lord of the Rings, where you've got 3 movies, you've got all this time, and you're developing the character complexities, if somebody dies, we actually care. So absolutely super excited to see Bill Leahy in, and he deserves it because he absolutely smashed the field. Is he good at endurance events?
And so legs cramp bad on event 1, and then it was just...
Grant's got, Grant, keeping it real. Yeah. He's got this theory that you suck at endurance events.
Really? That's interesting.
Between Jorge Fernandez and Bill Leahy, I'm going to go with Bill Leahy, although I really hope that there's not a lot of long endurance events because I don't think he does well at that.
That's interesting.
How do you like them apples?
I'm going to give him a pass and say he did pretty good on the endurance event that we had this weekend, but the jury's still out. Look, my theory's got some holes in it. When it got brought up, I thought about it a little bit more, and I just looked at every semifinals event. In the first day jitters that he seemingly got every year, I looked at and I said, oh my, look at this. Every first day has had a 25 to 35 minute event that Bill has been absolutely terrible in. But in 2022 at the MAC, there was an endurance event that he did pretty good at. He took 7th, I think, and his first day was still really bad with shorter events. He was in like 20th after the first day. So he has consistently had an issue with the first day, but has had some endurance events that he did good at. And he withdrew in 2023 because he had COVID, so it makes sense why he would suck at the endurance event. He was sick going into TFX, although he was better. I would imagine that being off training and coming off being sick, a 25-minute grindy chipper wouldn't be the best first event. The only one that really doesn't have an explanation is 2024 West Coast Classic with the runs and the lifts. Maybe he just paced it wrong. I don't know. There's not enough evidence there to say he's not good at an endurance events. But I tell you what, Bill, you're sure going to get him at the CrossFit Games. Enjoy that 6-mile run with the row right in the middle of it.
The only Bill I know is Bill, not the science guy.
Oh, we'll find out. I hope you do well. So in summary, what do we make of all this? Well, we've definitely got 2 people going to the CrossFit Games that we know should be there, and I like that. And I hope that in the end, if Nate Ackerman can show some mettle and some grit and makes it through last chance qualifier, I would feel a little bit more at peace if that was the way that it worked out. Until then, with the other 2 game spots, at least one, all I'm left with is questions and a bitter taste in my mouth. What if the time cap allowed the 2nd and 3rd place finishers to complete the heavy lift and sprint across the finish line? What if the weights didn't randomly change the day of the competition? What if there wasn't poor communication about it? What if the weights weren't on the floor? What if the gators were at the same speed? What if that event wasn't there? What if it wasn't scored as 2 events? What if it was thrown out? What if somebody won the row because they got to their rower first and beat the person at the last rower by 6 seconds? Now that just all goes into the long lost land of the forgotten because we'll all forget about it. But if they don't make the games, Nate Ackerman won't. Carolyn Prevost won't. To them, in a sense, this is everything. Maybe not everything, but this is what you train for every single day. It's kind of funny because my cover for this video had already been made before I did this video, and I made it on like Friday, and it was kind of clickbaity, like, it's absolutely insane that this event is sending people to the CrossFit Games. And I was, at the time, enthralled by the uniqueness of the event. But as the weekend went on, suddenly my cover photo and my title for this video became less and less clickbait and more reality. And that's not good. So in tribute to an event at NorCal that was abrupt and unsatisfying,